Das vidanya, товарищ. He is not getting home. A little bit of MiG-3 action right here in IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad. And we're going to talk about this plane in a little bit more detail since it has been released actually some time ago for Battle of Moscow. However, I do want to preface this video with 3 short little news updates essentially. Now, I would encourage you to at least hear the first announcement that I have, but if you do want to skip straight to the action, then I will have an annotation taking you directly to my MiG-3 talk. The first one really relates to this title as a whole, and as you guys know, I've been playing it a lot last year. I pretty much saturated my channel with it, but I do have to say that at this point, I've talked about some of the problems with this game before in pretty much every video I made, and recently, about a month ago, I also made my video about detailing essentially whether you should buy Battle of Stalingrad or not, in which I said that you should probably hold off for now, not get it as your first sim, and try something like, I don't know, Rise of Flight or DCS, or even the good old Cliffs of Dover with the Team Fusion map first, since those games are simply cheaper and have already matured as a simulation game. I have to add to that at this point I'm actually starting to get annoyed with Battle of Stalingrad and Battle of Moscow a little bit. It's not that I don't actually enjoy the game anymore, but some of the issues that I've talked about, flight models, inconsistencies between the nation, damage model inconsistencies between the nations, and, well, that's pretty much the main part, are starting to severely hamper my enjoyance with the title, and I do get annoyed at times when I see this kind of stuff that at first I kind of let slide a little bit, of course telling you guys the issues, but for myself saying, it's a new sim, it's a fresh sim, and these things take time to change, but I'm not actually seeing a lot of change there, and I'm not even seeing an engagement of the developer in that regard. So yes, I am in that way getting a little bit more reserved when it comes to my engagement with this title, and while I will continue making videos about it, I do have to say that I'm going to also look more at other titles now and kind of bring a little bit more variety to the channel, since that is probably good for me, good for you guys, and just generally a better solution to it all. Second quick announcement is that I have recently uploaded some pictures, some photographs that I took at the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, when I was over there studying, and of course I visited that DMZ zone, and as a good tourist, of course, I took pictures and I shared them on my Facebook page. So if that is something that actually interests you, check it out there. I'll have a link down in the description below. I added a little bit of commentary to each picture, kind of explaining what is going on, kind of a little bit more perspective on things, especially from somebody who has actually studied this part of history and the continued developments between these two nations. So that might maybe interest you to some degree. And the third quick announcement here is that I have created a Reddit page, not so much for the channel, but actually as a sort of tool to have flight enthusiasts and kind of warbird enthusiasts from the Second World War, and maybe also the eras afterwards, First World War of course as well, to kind of share information on different aircrafts, pilots from different nations and so on. So I'm going to also have a link in the description below if you have any kind of information about, for example, pilots from your country. Let's say you're from Eastern Europe, for example. There's not a lot of information available, for example, for us people in the West about pilots and the kind of history of those countries when it comes to aviation. So if you have any kind of quality sources there, you can put them up. If you're interested in sharing the stories of some of your favorite pilots, you can put them up there. If you're interested in sharing videos made by somebody that are historic in nature, so for example people like Xenos Warbirds or Kermit or something, you can put them up there. And it's essentially just an experiment here, trying to get people engaged, trying to get people exchange information. If you do get on there, I greatly appreciate it if you would also share something, not just take, essentially, give and take. That's kind of a part of a healthy community as well. But it's really up to you to decide what you want to do. The option is there. It's an experiment. I want to see how it goes, and if there is a good solid amount of engagement, I will keep on maintaining that Reddit page. And if it doesn't happen, you know, if there is no interest in it, then at some point I will probably just close it down, because at that point it's not worth the effort. Alright, so let's have a look at the cockpit first, then, shall we? Quite a nice little setup here with the MiG-3. It's a nice sleek cockpit. Closing that canopy, you can see that there's actually some pretty good rearward visibility, especially if we would lean over. You know, there's not any big bars in the way, really. It's all nice and kind of fresh and crisp view outside. There does seem to be some duct tape here. It's not actually duct tape, but it does look a little bit like duct tape. But oh well, you know, it flies. And let's open it up again, have a little bit of fresh air, and have a look at the overall cockpit layout. Now, you've got all your dials here. They're arranged in a pretty straightforward manner. You've got, for example, your altitude there. You've got your compass, artificial horizon, speed, bank indicator, climb, and so forth. So all of these dials are very easy to read. They're straightforward. You have a clear view on them. As you you know, look around, you can just snap back and you can see them again. Okay, so what about all the dials and levers and so on? We're going to start off on the left side with a small caveat, because we're going to come back to this wheel right here at some point once we've done the full tour. We're actually going to start with this little handle here, which is the water radiator. So you crank that, you open up the water radiator full, and you crank it back, and you can kind of see the indicator right there. It moves as you move it up, and this is of course fully closed, while this is fully opened. Right, let's go ahead and close that back. Then we have the flaps. Now the flaps, you can drop them to 100% if you don't make any changes to it. We'll come back to that later, but you can drop them to 100% like this, so, and put them back up like so. Then mixture and throttle. Those are those two handles there. Now it's a little bit hidden, but it'll make sense once I start moving the mixture right here. That's the black handle. You can see the mixture moving there. And of course the big handle with the kind of brown reddish color wood around it. That's your throttle right there. Moving along, you'll have your prop setting on this little cogwheel here. Now, at that point in time, we'll move over to the other side of the cockpit, and we're moving to the oil radiator, and you move that fully up and fully closed. Fully up and fully closed. Here we go, we have that. Now then there are a couple of switches here, and you won't see anything happen now since our engine is off, but you can see some of the switches here do move, and that's cockpit lights, landing lights, and so on and so forth. And then we're moving on to these little wheels here, and those are your trim tabs. Now you have pitch trim right there. Move that back, and you've got your yaw trim, your rudder trim right here. So that's all pretty nice and set, but let's go back to this special wheel here. Now if you move your stick to the side, you'll see there is this indicator on the floor, and it's a little bit hard to read, but it's essentially set to numbers. You can kind of make out a 0 there, maybe a 7, a 6 perhaps, and well, when you crank this wheel here, it essentially changes the flaps limiter. So right now the flaps are set to 100%. However, this is the default key now that I'm talking about. If you press left shift F, you can change that limiter, and you can see the indicator moves and moves and moves. And I'm going to put it to, let's say, 50%. There we are. That's the flaps limiter is set to a 50%. And now if I lower the flaps, they will lower to 50%. However, if I keep on pressing the flaps button, it'll extend the flaps even more, and we're back to 100%. Now, looking at the plane and its modifications that you can have stock, the MiG-3 comes with 2 rifle caliber machine guns, the well-known Chakas, and one 12.7mm UBS Berezin machine gun. You can equip 2 additional gun pods, one on each wing, which allows you to have a little bit more firepower with additional 12.7s. And if we look at the other modification, this is once again a stock aircraft, and we can change that to a MiG-3 that is equipped only with 12.7s, which gives it 700 rounds in the 50 cals essentially, or 2 20mm cannons with 300 rounds. Then moving on to the external detail here a little bit, we'll have an all-around view, and you can see the water cooler down here. You can open and close that. This is of course done to decrease the drag that you have. You might want to have to play around with that a little bit. And then on the side of the engine there, you have the oil cooler down here. Close those as well, decrease the drag. In my testing, I usually put it to 50% even on the summer and autumn maps, and that seemed to work fine, so you don't have to keep them up all the way, since then you'll be able to squeeze out a few more kilometers an hour. Now for ground attack, you can equip the MiG-3 with either 6 rockets. I'm pretty bad with those, except against maybe large targets like a ship. Those are the RS-82, so that's the small rockets. They're actually not that effective. Against trains, ships, probably a good call. Against anything else, you want to use bombs. You can equip either 50 kilogram bombs or 100 kilogram bombs. Those are the ones that I have equipped here. And since you only have 2 of them on your aircraft, it's not really a strong ground attack aircraft, but it can be used in that role. Now the MiG-3 is a very sensitive aircraft to fly. It is not easy to control. It's extremely hyperactive, and any kind of control input you do seems to be emphasized by a wide margin really from what you expect the aircraft to do. And you'll also see in the footage in the background from now on me flying this aircraft. Some of that is from my early flies, some of the flies are from the time when I actually got used to this aircraft. This will probably be one of those aircraft that will challenge you the most in getting used to it. You also have to remember that in order to survive and do well in the MiG-3, you really have to adapt to the aircraft and what it does well. If you currently fly it on the multiplayer server, you're going to run into F2s, 190s, and G2s, and not the German opposition that comes actually with Battle of Stalingrad, which would be E7 and the Macchis. And at that point, you will face aircrafts that just dance around you. The MiG-3 has absolutely no ability to hang with, for an F4, for example. At least, for example, in the testing that I've did, where I flew against a MiG, it was quite easy staying on top of those guys and just picking up one after the other. What you've got to remember is that this aircraft is probably one of the only, if not the only, real high altitude capable fighter that the Russians produced in large numbers during the war. It does quite well after you reach an altitude of 5,000, 6,000 meters, and there it essentially has its best performance. However, at these lower altitudes where most of the fights are going to happen, you will struggle, and especially if you, for example, load up the gun pod, which is going to make flying the MiG-3 so much more difficult than it already in many ways is. I gotta be honest, I did not really enjoy the time in the MiG-3. I do like the way it looks, I do like the plane itself. I always am a sucker for aircraft that somehow don't fit into how a nation perceived, its air war capability, and the MiG-3 is an excellent example in that, since it's one of the only high altitude fighters the Russians ever had. So I do try to like this aircraft, but I simply can't. And what you got to remember is, when you fly at low altitudes, you really want to stick to lines. Now, you do see me maneuvering quite wildly with some of these fighters here. I do try to stick on them to see if I'm able to do so, really. But you want to fly in straight lines. You don't want to maneuver too much. You don't want to do that typical kind of energy fighting approach that you see some people using in, for example, the 109s or the Yaks. You want to stay fast while you shy away from a very close kind of matched engagement, while utilizing essentially your speed to come in, fire your guns and zoom out. The problem there is, of course, that the firepower might be a rough spot here for the MiG-3, depending on what kind of modification you do, although even the stock firepower does quite well if you get the hits that you require. It always depends where you hit the enemy aircraft, of course. and as such it sometimes varies from situation to situation if you're going to be successful or not. One of the up points there is that it has quite good aerodynamics, so that helps in retaining your speed, and its roll rate is pretty competitive too, in my opinion, although you gotta be careful with that since you do lose control quite fast at times. So those are essentially my thoughts on the MiG-3. If you've played this aircraft, then do let me know in the comments below. Tell me what you thought about her. And if you just simply have an interest in the MiG-3 and you have a few more questions, then of course you know where to reach me as well. So as always guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends. And as always, have a great day, good hunting, and see you in the sky.